Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is an extremely auspicious occasion for Birmingham because we are so fortunate to have Swami Sarvapriyananda with us here today. And thank you to all of you who have come to have the amazing experience of hearing him speak in person. So to get started, Swamiji, we will invite you to please light the lamp. The trick of you actually have to do it. We have a match called candlelight, whichever way you want to do it. To start our evening off, I would like to invite Birmingham's Sai group to perform some devotional bhajans to start off this evening in the proper tone.
Second mic.
Where's the second mic? Where is it?
Thank you, Vishaka. Dear friends, for those of you who know Sarvapriyananda ji, no introduction is needed. For those of you who do not know him, I would like to introduce you to Swamiji the way I was introduced to him. My eldest son died on January 6, 2014. The official verdict was suicide. Ovid was a voracious reader, an idealist. All he ever wanted to do was make this world a better place. Reading fiction was the way I used to relax. But for many months after my son's death, the only book I could read was Gita. I could readily identify with Arjuna. Yat shokam utshoshanam indriyanam. The grief felt like it was scorching all my senses. But sadly, Krishna's advice was not really making sense to me. Take, for example, the 28th sloka of chapter 2. Avyakta dini bhutani vyakta madhyani bharata avyakta nidhananneva tatra ka paridevana. I felt like wailing, Krishna, of course my son was unseen and unmanifest before his birth. And of course he was unseen and unmanifest again after his death. In fact, he was only manifest and seen while he lived for 24 years and 10 days. That's obvious. But how does it lead to tatra ka paridevana? What's the point of grief and despair? I knew that I had to dive deeper, but I did not know how. During the summer of 2015, I was introduced to Swamiji's lectures on YouTube. The IIT Kanpur lecture, Defining God based on Taittiriya Upanishad, spoke to me, as I am a scientist by training. Swamiji, you say there, now follow carefully. Magic happens. Something clicked in me then, and magic did happen. But let me catch you up on Swamiji. After high school, he obtained a business management degree from Xavier Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar, Odisha, India. Today he found Manisha, whose sister was his batchmate, and they had a lovely time reminiscing about old days. He joined the Ramakrishna Order immediately afterwards. It seems that it produced a stir in Bhubaneswar in 1994 and took his monastic vows in 2004. In 2015, Swamiji moved to the US and became the Assistant Minister of the Vedanta Society of Southern California, located smack in the middle of Hollywood. On January 6, 2017, he was appointed the head of Vedanta Society of New York, located in Manhattan. That's the position he still holds. Again, back to me. I started following your Drishya Vivek lectures given at Hollywood very carefully. As I study better when I have the slokas printed with the meaning of each word explained, during the second or third lecture, I asked my husband if a copy was available on Amazon. We were both working at a kitchen table on our laptops. He looked it up and replied no. But 15 minutes later, he presented me with the printed copy of Drishya Viveka. He had found the PDF version published by the Mysore Ramakrishna Mission in 1931. Fun fact, price, 1 rupee. Shubhakar was simply the best husband one could ask for. And yet, life was getting ready to throw me another curveball. On February 9, 2018, my husband died during our trip to Australia. This time, though, I was more prepared, thanks to you, to deal with the deluge of grief and desolation. Just recently, my 96-year-old, very mentally alert father has drastically lost most of his mental acuity due to a series of mild strokes. One morning, I was singing to him, sometimes I need to feel the hand of God. Though I have sung this Rabindranath song many times before, that morning, You Filled the Dark became real through the example you give of light pervading the dark space between the earth and the sun, only to be seen when it illuminates a comet or the moon. Since 2015, your lectures have not only provided me with the ABCs to start understanding the Gita and the Upanishads, they also make the world around me clearer. But most importantly, your lectures teach me how to live my life. Thank you, Swamiji. Today's lecture is based on the second chapter of Gita. The topic is Sthitaprajna, how to live an enlightened life.
Thank you so much, Shobhini. And with that, Swamiji, I invite you to the podium. There is a step. Careful as you go up. And I'm assuming the mic is working. So.
Can you hear me? Yes, it is working. But this lovely hall has extraordinary acoustics, I think. Sound carries beautifully in this hall. Let me start with the chant and then we go from there. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal unto the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good evening and namaste everybody. Thank you for inviting me to your beautiful city and for organizing this beautiful program in this beautiful location. The Universalist Church has always welcomed spiritual teachers, all denominations, all faiths. And I remember particularly Swami Vivekananda, when he came to this country in 1893. The first people to welcome him with open arms was the Universalist Church, the Unitarian Universalist, and he spoke in different churches across the United States. So thank you to the wonderful folks from this church who are hosting us here this evening. Thank you to Shruti for that heartfelt introduction, and to my hosts who have been very kind to the organizers here. This subject, as was mentioned, is from the Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter, Sthitaprajna. It's a beautiful sequence of verses at the end of the second chapter. In fact, one of the things that we do as monks is memorize the Bhagavad Gita, but sometimes a little bit of a concession is given. There are monks who are not very good at memorizing. I remember one case where the exasperated monastic master said, you just have to memorize the Sthitaprajna, those verses. That's enough. If you cannot memorize the whole Bhagavad Gita, just memorize that much. It's that important and that beautiful also. But it's an advanced subject. Advanced in what respect? We have to keep in mind what goes before that. In the Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter, Krishna has already taught Arjuna the doctrine of the self. This class is for the rest of us, not for the enlightened. Yeah, I would be happy about it. Drum, which air cannot desiccate and dry up and so on. So he teaches him that. And then he goes on to show that this soul, the Atman, is not an object. He uses the term aprameya, a single term, very, very pregnant there. It's not an object. It is that to which the entire universe, including this body, including this mind, they're all objects which we experience. But you, the experiencer, the subject, your pure consciousness. So he teaches him the doctrine of the soul. That the soul is actually not even Atman, is not even a doer or even the enjoyer or sufferer. In Sanskrit, karta bhokta. It's pure consciousness only when limited to mind, senses and body that it becomes a person and a doer and a sufferer and an enjoyer, karta bhokta. But in itself, by yourself, you are just limitless awareness, limitless being. Alright, it's good. But Arjuna was a man of action, a warrior. When coming here, we saw there's a town called Warrior. Exit, warrior. So Arjuna was a warrior, a man of action. So he he comes back to his original question. Yeah, that's all very good. That's cool. I didn't know that, but that's really great to know. Gives me a lot of peace. But right now I have this problem. This battle, this life I have to face, the battlefield of life, which is our problem all the time. We have a life to lead. How can your spirituality help here? And Krishna says to him, right here, in this life, you can lead a spiritual life. You have to spiritualize your actions. Karma Yoga, the teachings of the Karma Yoga. Not our subject this evening. I'm just telling you what has gone on before. Teachings of the Atman, that you are pure consciousness, you are bliss itself. Shankaracharya says, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am the nature of Shiva, I am pure consciousness, I am bliss itself. That realization is a very profound teaching. The essential teaching of the Upanishads of Vedanta. Tattvamasi, you are that, the ultimate reality. So that's all done. That's already in your rear view mirror. And the teaching of how to spiritualize our actions, day-to-day life, instead of doing worldly actions for worldly purposes. The same actions can be spiritualized and can help us in spiritual life instead of binding us and becoming an obstacle to spiritual life. Another great teaching, the doctrine of Karma Yoga. When Swami is there, Anubhavananda Saraswati, he is known as the smiling Swami. He is always smiling. And makes you smile all the time also. I'll give you one example. I was with him on one of these online events on a Gita talk, and he started his talk in this way. Krishna taught Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. He taught him so many things. The great philosophy of the Vedanta, Jnana Yoga, the way of knowledge. He taught him how to meditate, meditation, Jnana Yoga, the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Taught him devotion, worship of God, love and devotion to God. And then this Swami said, all of it utterly useless. Utterly useless. Why? Arjuna's immediate problem in the middle of the battlefield. Is he going to sit and meditate and do the pranayama exercises and close his eyes and sit in a lotus posture? His enemies, the Kauravas, will shoot him full of arrows if he does that. Impossible. Is he going to do devotional practices, take the Hare Rama, Hare Krishna in the middle of the battlefield? Impossible. Is he going to go the path of Vedanta, the study of the Upanishads and all the subtle argumentations, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, hearing, reasoning, meditation? Impossible. Only one thing that Krishna taught Arjuna that on the battlefield was useful to him. And that was the great teaching of Karma Yoga. How to transform our daily activities, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, young or old, wherever you are. How can we spiritualize our daily life? Not just in the church, not just in the Gita talk, not just while meditating, but also in the office, in the kitchen, in the community, when driving on the road. How? So that is again the teaching of Karma Yoga. It's really profound, really worth learning for everybody. Again, not our subject. I'm mentioning it because this is in the rear view mirror. This is already done. That's why I'm saying what we're going to do today is an advanced subject. It's sort of digging deep. And I'm encouraged to do this because many of you have been following Vedanta, you've been studying Vedanta for some time, so you already know what I'm talking about. Even if you haven't been, you've been coming to the church here, you've been exposed to a variety of spiritual teachings. So, nobody here is really a beginner that way. So, alright, let's jump right in. At the end of the 2nd chapter, Arjuna asks this question to Krishna. So, suppose I become enlightened, like you are saying. How will it be different? What will it be like to be enlightened? What is the nature of an enlightened person? How does an enlightened person meditate? How does this person walk, talk, sit? He literally asks these questions. Arjuna vacha, Arjuna spake thus. Sthitaprajnasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. O Krishna, O Keshava. This enlightened person, and the words he uses are very interesting. The term he uses for an enlightened person is Sthitaprajna. Stabilized wisdom, the one of stabilized wisdom. Often when we study Vedanta or any spiritual teaching, we have one question. I get it. I understand what's being said here, I understand what's there in the book, but I find it very difficult when I come into contact with life. It's all great when I'm in a class or reading a book or listening to a lecture, but when I'm faced with life itself, with difficult people, with physical problems, with financial problems, all of it flies out of the window. And I react to life the way I have been reacting earlier. I just go on with the old. Now I have double problem. Earlier, life problems. Now life problem plus spiritual problem. The spiritual problem is that I should be, reacting in a different way to life. I should be better than, all my friends who are not spiritual. I'm quote unquote spiritual. I should be above it all. How do I use this in day-to-day life? How is it useful to me? How can I make it useful? How can I make my learning, my wisdom, my clarity, my enlightenment, how can I make it stable, effective? So the word, the sage of stabilized wisdom, Sthitaprajna, how to lead an enlightened life. So Arjuna is asking that. How is this person, Samadhista, when this person meditates, how is that person's meditation different from the rest of us? Kimasita, how does this person sit? Kim Prabhashita, talk? Kim Rajeta, how does he walk around? But he's literally not asking how the person sits. Arjuna, Krishna could give an answer, he sits on a chair just like the rest of us. No. What he's asking is, how does this person interact with the world, with people and things and life itself? That's the meaning of walking around, interacting. How does this person react? Meaning of how does he speak? This means how does he react, this person, he or she? How does this person react to the problems which come? How is their reaction different from my reaction? And asita, sit means how does this person withdraw from the world when it's necessary? So this is the question. How is the enlightened one, this one of stabilized wisdom, different from the rest of us? How do they gain? What do they gain out of all this? And Krishna gives the answers, and the answers there are from the 55th verse to the 72nd verse of the second chapter, verses 55 to 72. Beautiful sequence, wonderful sequence. I'll give you the executive summary in a couple of sentences, and then we'll focus on one verse only, which deals with suffering, grief, sorrow, difficult times, tough times, challenges, and how do we face that with spiritual knowledge. So the executive summary goes something like this. Oh, by the way, before I go into that, it's great if the enlightened person is like that, but how do I gain? I don't claim to be enlightened, so how do I gain? That's the question in our minds. Whatever are the characteristics of these enlightened persons, those become practices for us. Those are clues to advanced practice. Shankaracharya, in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, he says this, as introducing this sequence of verses, Shankaracharya says, I'll tell you the Sanskrit original and translate. He says, Sarvatreva hi adhyatma shastre, in all spiritual literature, in all spiritual texts, kritarthasya lakshanani yani, whatever are the characteristics of the enlightened person, of the perfected being. Kritartha is the perfected being. Whatever are the characteristics of the enlightened person, the perfected being, Tani eva upadishyante sadhana. Those characteristics are now turned into instructions for the rest of us. Why? Yatna sadhyatva. Because you can attain that state through practice. So what he's saying there is basically these are advanced teachings, deeper teachings, assuming you have a background of Vedanta, assuming you have a background of what Krishna has told you. Now you dive deep into it. It's not just something that the enlightened person is like, we'll say that, oh, the enlightened person is like this or that, good for that person. What did I gain out of it? Well, this is what you gain out of it. These are very deep, very effective, very powerful teachings, but a little advanced. What does he say? What is Krishna's teaching? I'll give you the summary now, and then focus on, the rest of the time we'll focus on one verse. One sadhu put it very beautifully in Hindi. I'll tell you what he said. Krishna's entire teaching, you take away in one sentence. Bodh me ekattva, chit me samatva, vyavahar me asangatva. In your understanding, your realization, your conception of who am I or what am I, you are one consciousness, one undivided consciousness. Bodh mein ekatva. Literally, in your realization, you are one consciousness. Second, chitta mein, at the level of the mind, at the level of our thinking. Chitta mein samatva, at the level of the mind, evenness, serenity. Serenity, evenness, peaceful mind, at the level of the mind. And vyavahar mein asangatva, at the level of our life, dealings with people and things and day-to-day life. Detachment. Literally, asangatva means non-attachment. And all of this made possible on the basis of control of the senses. Indriya nigraha. Krishna spends a lot of time about talking about the sense control in this. Swami Vivekananda at one time, he wrote to a disciple here in America a note on the 4 yogas, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. Talking about Jnana Yoga, he said, this yoga consists chiefly in the control of the senses. It's an interesting description of Jnana Yoga, Vedanta, because we think when we talk about Vedanta, we think it consists mostly in inquiry and philosophizing and argument and YouTube lectures and no, Vivekananda said it consists mostly chiefly in the control of the senses. And Krishna spends a lot of time there in this sequence. So this is your executive summary. One line. What does Krishna say in that Sthitaprajna, that sequence of verses? Ekatva, oneness. We are one reality. Contrary to this diversity that we feel around ourselves, there actually is one underlying spiritual reality. That's one. Second, level of mind, evenness, serenity. It's a practice. Third, in the level of our life, our dealings with life, the way we live life, the principle is non-attachment. We remain in the midst of it. He's not saying that, remember, he's not telling Arjuna actually to run away and become a monk. That's what Arjuna wanted to do. He didn't want to fight the battle of life. Krishna is telling him just the opposite. You be right there, where you are, with whom you are, doing what you are doing. But this is your philosophy, which will help you. You can be more monastic than any monk sitting on the Himalayan heights in a cave. I remember Swami Vivekananda's beautiful summary of this entire teaching. I'll share it with you and then we'll go ahead. Vivekananda, this was particularly striking for me because I read it in the Himalayas. Vivekananda says in one of his talks, he who runs away from life to meditate and die in a Himalayan cave has missed the way. This was particularly stunning for me because I was doing that at that time. I had run away from life, I had run away from the ashram. I was staying in the Himalayas for a couple of months begging for my food. Not literally in a cave, but though I did visit monks in caves, but in a little hut. And when I read what Vivekananda said, it's like literally he's telling me, you missed the way, my boy. The one who runs away to meditate and die in a Himalayan cave has missed the way. And then what's the opposite? He who plunges into the foolishness, the vanities of life, he too has missed the way. But that's very, very strange, because we think it's a binary. There are only two things. Either you plunge into life itself, all around you, or you withdraw. And he says, both cases, you have missed the way. Then what is the way? The way is to divinize life itself. Is to see God in everything around you, in what you are doing, and with people around you, within and without, everywhere. Find divinity everywhere. I gave the example of the gold and ornaments example. Very beautiful example. You are told, you see a bracelet, and then you see a ring, and then you see maybe a tiara, and then golden. And you're told, these are not the reality. The reality is gold. If somebody doesn't know what gold is, will think that, all right, let me throw these things, they are not real anyway. So I'm going to look for gold. I'm going to throw the ornaments away and look for gold. Will he find gold? No, he just threw it away. He is like this guy who goes up to the Himalayan the mountains to meditate and die there to find God. And the other way around also, the one who focuses on a particular ornament. Oh, this is gold. The necklace is gold. I get it. It doesn't. Because the moment the necklace is melted and made into something else, gone, my gold is gone. It's the same gold, but it looks like a tiara. The name is different, the shape is different, the use is different, but the same thing continues all the time. That's what Vivekananda is saying. You find that ultimate reality, God within and God without, in every experience, in everybody, wherever you are. When? He's not against going to the Himalayas. He's not against doing your job in the office and the family also. His only thing is, you do it, but you hold on to God, you hold on to a spiritual foundation, be centered there, and then whatever you do, whomever you are with, you find the same reality everywhere. You are at peace everywhere. People ask me, so you talk about the Himalayas so much, don't you want to go back to the Himalayas? I said, I would love to, but it's not a keen hankering anymore. The impulse which drove me from a beautiful ashram to the Himalayan heights, that impulse is not there. I have hopefully matured a little bit to see that you're not looking for external, God doesn't lie. It is not that God starts at 5,000 feet and all you to 10,000 feet. There are monks there who never come down below 5,000 feet. So for them it's less spiritual. So the higher up you want to be. Alright. Now the verse that I want to focus on today, very profound, very important verse, especially when spirituality is good, all fine and good when things are going well. When things are not going well, it doesn't seem to help. I remember at the beginning of the COVID, I was talking about spiritual practices, and one exasperated question was, which is COVID had just struck, and remember, New York, and it was the peak of COVID, the maximum number of infections. There were more than 1,000 deaths in that city alone every day at its peak. So there was an exasperated question. At this time we have to practice spiritual practices and study philosophy? I said, this is the time. If it's not useful now, what do you think Vedanta is for? What do you think spirituality is for? Just to pass time, just tickle the nerves a little bit, little nice lecture to listen to? No, it must come to my help when I am in great danger. So, this verse, Krishna says, I'll tell you the verse first and then we'll dive into it for the remaining time. Dukkeshu anudvigna mana Sukheshu vigata spriya Vitaraga bhaya krodha Stita nirujyate. Muni, the sage, is said to be of stabilized wisdom when, in the midst of sorrow, one remains unperturbed, serene. And in the midst of nice things, pleasant things, pleasure, one is without hankering. Free from Vitaraga bhaya krodha, free from hankering, free from fear, free from anger. This enlightened one is said to be of stabilized wisdom. Very beautiful verse. Let's go into it. So I just dwell for a while on the first quarter of the verse. To remain unperturbed in the midst of the greatest sorrows. It's a huge thing. If you could unlock that particular secret, that would be something extraordinary. Now, the moment we hear that, the first objection that comes to our mind is, hey, wait a minute. When you sell Vedanta to us, you say that the goal of Vedanta is to go beyond sorrow, to attain ultimate or lasting deep peace and joy. But now you are saying, even for the enlightened one, has to remain unperturbed in the midst of sorrow, meaning thereby sorrows will keep coming for the enlightened person also. You promise it. If in this fact, spirituality, Vedanta, whatever you call it, one of the way you are selling it, the goal is to go beyond sorrow. Now you are saying that to remain unperturbed in the midst of sorrow. That means sorrow is still there. The same question was asked by a monk to the Buddha. And this is from the original sources. So the monk asked the Buddha, I have a question. Buddha, he lived a long, long life. He fasted at the age of 80. We had a pretty big monastic organization, the Sangha, by that time. This monk asked a question. You taught us that there is sorrow in life. Sarvam dukkha, the first noble truth. You remember those sights with the young prince Siddhartha saw? An old man, a diseased man, a dead body, and a monk. So old age, disease, death, these are signposts of great sorrow. It's not all of sorrow, but suffering. Old age is suffering, disease is suffering, death is suffering. And you said there is a solution for this. You called it nirvana. And you said that there is a way to overcome. There is a procedure, there is a methodology, sadhana, which we call spiritual practice. And you taught us the eightfold way. So the Buddha must have said, good, what's your question? But my question is, I see that we all who are your followers, we are all growing old. Some of us are getting disease. Some of us have died. So how did following your teaching overcome old age, disease, death, suffering? Not only that, you claim that you are enlightened, you are the Buddha. So clearly you have overcome suffering, and yet you are growing old. You get disease. I'm sorry to say, but you will die also very soon, sometime. So how have you overcome suffering? And how have we, by following your teaching, overcome suffering? So the Buddha's answer is pertinent for all spiritual seekers, for all ages, in all religions. Very clear, logical, pinpoint, precise answer. Vivekananda called Buddha the sanest man who ever lived. No cobwebs in that brain. Look at the answer. He says, the nature of suffering, O monk, is like a man hit by 2 arrows. Imagine when you are hit by an arrow, the shock, the pain, the stinging. And then imagine being hit by another arrow right after that. What's the first arrow? The first arrow is what life throws at you. Old age, disease, death, poverty, humiliation, failure. That's the first arrow. The second arrow is how you react to that. What is our reaction to what life throws at you? And most of our suffering is caused by that second arrow. Especially those who are doctors, psychiatrists. You know, 2 patients, they react quite differently to suffering. Somebody who is facing a life-threatening disease, terrible problem, may face it with courage and dignity. Another person, minor problem, may just simply break down. So whose suffering is more? Suffering of the person whose reaction is suffering. That suffering is more. The second arrow is actually connected to our suffering. And the Buddha said that what I teach you, O monk, will take away the suffering from that second arrow. About the first arrow, I cannot do anything. Even for the enlightened ones, you can see here. And all the enlightened ones, all the saints and the masters in different spiritual traditions. They faced old age, they faced disease, death, and many kinds of suffering, sometimes more than ordinary people like us face. Yet what was the difference? If you ask them, they are beyond suffering. A beautiful story about Sri Ramakrishna. When he was dying from throat cancer, terminal throat cancer, this was in 1886. And one of his young disciples comes to him and asks him, Sir, how are you today? And Sri Ramakrishna says, it hurts. I can't eat. I'm translating from Bengali. But the young disciple, Hori, who later became Swami Sarvapriyananda, the young disciple said, but sir, I see that you are in great bliss. Which would be a cruel thing to say to a cancer patient, a terminal cancer patient. But Sri Ramakrishna's reaction was extraordinary. He laughed and he said, oh, the rascal has found me out. Bengali is the rascal has found me out. Which means he confirms what the disciple said, that he's not acting. It's really there is cancer. Really there is pain. Really there is suffering. At the same time, at a more fundamental level, somehow this person is at peace. This person is in joy and completely fulfilled. And that can be ours. That is the spiritual quest. How to remain unperturbed, serene, peaceful, even joyful in the midst of suffering. Another more recent example. I can give you many examples. The professor Arindam Chakravarti, who is a philosopher at the University of Hawaii, he told me about his spiritual master, Dhiraj Sharma, who was a monk in Calcutta, a Vaishnava monk. Very great, well-known spiritual master. Not so long ago. So he said that when this master, when he passed away, he was very ill, and this professor, who was a young novice at that time, who was serving this old teacher, So when somebody is very sick, you have to be careful about bed sores. So the old monk, he had bed sores, and few people have to hold him up while they clean his back, the bed sores. And it stings, it hurts when you clean it with rubbing alcohol or something. But he said when we would do that, this old Swami would giggle, would laugh. This dying old man, when you were cleaning his bed sores, he bursts out laughing. And the doctor would say, "Doesn't it hurt?" He said, "Oh yes, it hurts." "Then why are you laughing?" "Oh, because it's great fun." And the doctor said, "Don't do that, Swami, because otherwise we don't know how to treat you. We don't know where it's hurting." So, how is it possible? How is it possible? Dukkhe Chanudvignamara. Being serene in the midst of sorrow. Alright, now I'm going to do a deep dive into what exactly constitutes sorrow and how do we deal with it. I'm going to look at this dukkha, suffering. It can be a whole range, from mild irritation to great grief and tragedy. All of it. I'm going to do what is called an analysis at 3 levels. I'll tell you the Sanskrit and then translate it to English. Analysis of what? Suffering, with a view towards a spiritual solution. So, dukkha. 3 levels. Karana drishti, vastu drishti, sadhana drishti. From the perspective of cause of suffering, from the perspective of what suffering actually is, what is it, what is the material. And then finally from the perspective of spiritual practice. How do we deal with suffering? Alright. Karana drishti. What causes suffering? 3 levels again. First is usually what you come across in all these texts, in the old Vedantic texts. They say suffering has these 3 causes. Most of us have heard of this. Adhyatmic, adidaivic, adibhotik. Suffering caused by nature. Too hot, too cold. Earthquakes. Then there is suffering caused by other living beings. It could be anything from your annoying neighbor to COVID, the COVID virus. All kinds of living beings. And they can cause suffering to us. And then the third is adhyatmic. That means, here adhyatmic normally means spiritual, but doesn't mean spiritual here. It just means something related to body-mind. So illness, physical illness, mental anxiety, unhappiness, these causes suffering. And one might ask at this point, but all kinds of suffering has to come to body-mind to make me suffer, right? Even the natural one or the trouble caused by others. See, others cannot make you suffer without your permission. It seems it's a saying attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt, she said, "No one can hurt you without your consent." Hurt you means physically they can hurt you. The second arrow of the Buddha, mentally, that hurt entering your mind and becoming something nasty there, that requires your permission at some level. Anyway, so this is the preliminary look at suffering. The 3 causes. And this is everywhere in the Indian philosophical text you will find it. Threefold suffering. Threefold suffering. That's why when we say Om Shanti, 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 just heard that 3 times, it is meant to, to the cessation of natural suffering, suffering caused by other beings, and suffering in the body mind. That's the meaning of the threefold Shanti. Let's take a deeper look. Cause of suffering, deeper look. All suffering to become suffering has to be in the mind. Until that point, it doesn't become suffering. What is called dukkha-kala vritti. Vritti means modifications in the mind. Some of you may have heard Patanjali Yoga, the definition of yoga. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. The cessation of the movements of the mind is yoga. That's the definition of samadhi, meditation in yoga. Vritti. Dukkha-kala vritti. Vritti means a movement of the mind in the form of, with the content of suffering. It's like, it's awful, it's unpleasant, it's so boring. Some of you may be finding this boring, most of you aren't. I can read the audience, most of you listening in. So, this is called dukkha-kala vritti. It has to enter my mind and then give me suffering. No amount of external problems until I cognize it in my mind can give me suffering. Even the person who's dying in the hospital, in the ICU, The moment that person goes under anesthesia or goes into deep sleep, no problem, because the mind is not functioning. So only when the mind kicks in and recognizes all the problems around, then suffering. So a deeper analysis of suffering is dukkha vritti. And remember, all of these gives us clues where and how to tackle suffering. Dukkha vritti, of the nature of modification of the mind. But even there, a deeper analysis of the cause of suffering is, the third level is dukkha vritti abhiman, saying that it is mine. There is something in the world, I don't notice it, something unpleasant maybe. I don't care, it doesn't give me suffering. I notice it, and in the mind it's so unpleasant. It still won't give me suffering as long as I don't say, I am suffering. It's so unpleasant to me. I am owning that movement in the mind. If you think from Vedantic perspective, I am this consciousness in which this unpleasant thought, feeling has arisen. It was not there earlier, it has arisen now, it will disappear soon. I am this unmoved consciousness. Then it doesn't hurt you. That story I love, I have repeated so many times. If you are the witness of something, then it must be different from it. Just as the flower is a beautiful flower, I witness it, the eyes are different from the flower. Similarly, a thought in the mind, a feeling in the mind, is something that you are experiencing. If you are experiencing it, you are different from it. You are the experiencer, the illuminer of that thought. That story is there of a man who went to a monk in the Himalayas, and if you were in New York, you would have gone to a therapist. But in India, you go to a monk in the Himalayas and say, "मैं बहुत दुखी हूँ" in Hindi. I am very unhappy. I am very miserable. And the monk said, "Do you experience your misery?" And this man said, "Of course. That's why I come to you." "Do you experience your misery?" "Yes, I do. That's why I come to you." But if you experience your misery, you are the witness of the misery in your mind. You are not miserable. It's like saying, if I see this cloth, will I ever say, I am a cloth? No, I see a cloth. It's clearly different from it. Similarly, we say this body, but if I experience the body, then I am not literally the body. I am not skin and bones and flesh. I am the experiencer of this body. Yes, may I be embodied. Similarly, thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories. I am the witness of it. I am that which experiences it. But I am not it literally. Nor am I stuck to it. Nor is it mine. If you do that, you get peace of mind. And this person who asked the monk, he did that, he thought about it. Yes, you're right. This feeling of unpleasantness, I'm the witness of it. So I'm separate from it. It gives you a psychological space. He came back and told the monk, "Oh, I have so much peace now. Ab main bahut shant." And the monk scolded him. "No, you are not peaceful now. You are the witness of the peace in your mind." Here's a trap. The moment the mind is calm and nice, you say, "Oh, I am so calm and nice." Then you will be trapped again. The moment the mind can become disturbed. So the moment the mind becomes disturbed again, you will feel that I was so peaceful, now my mind is becoming disturbed. You are the witness of the disturbance in the mind, you are the witness of the peace in the mind. So dukkha vritti abhiman, this is the phrase used, identification with the modification of the mind in the form of suffering. That causes suffering. So now I see the cause of suffering at three levels. Threefold causes of suffering: external, natural, nature or persons or body mind. Second, the mental modification in the form of suffering, that this is so awful. Any doctor can tell you, oh, see, that's the cause of suffering. Some patients have that, some patients don't. Some patients feel, I'll deal with it. That's their mental modification, and they suffer less. And the third, even deeper, is that identification. This is my suffering. Now let's go to the second part of this analysis. The vastu drishti. Vastu drishti means a perspective on what is this suffering after all. Here, the highest perspective is, if according to Krishna's teachings, one existence consciousness which alone exists, a non-dual reality, no second. So if there is suffering, if you are seeing suffering, what is it? It cannot be anything other than that same Brahman. It's It's nothing other than existence, consciousness, bliss. It is the Atman itself appearing to me as suffering. It is none other than God itself. It is Brahman itself. Because there is nothing other than Brahman, according to your non-dual Vedanta. So it must be Brahman. That is Brahma Drishti. That's really, really high. It's very sublime. That's what makes Ramakrishna say, I am in bliss in the midst of suffering. Or that monk laugh aloud in the midst of pain. So he sees it as a flash of same consciousness. Pain also is a flash of the same consciousness. Actually, if you think about it that way, it makes sense. But if somebody says that's too difficult, I can't see pain and grief as God, it's really difficult. Alright, step down, little easier, little compromise. Brahma Vivarta, those who study Vedanta, these terms are self-explanatory. What is dukkha, what is suffering? Brahma Swarupa, it is Brahman, it's the absolute reality. Not the suffering itself, Brahman is the absolute reality. And then, step down, little compromise. Brahma Vivarta, Vivarta means an appearance. It's like a movie. See, on a movie screen, you can play a horror movie, you can play a comedy movie. The movie screen itself is not affected by the movie. If there is an inferno, the screen is not burnt. If there is a deluge of flood, the screen doesn't become wet and soggy. Similarly, in consciousness, the appearance of sorrow and its causes does not disturb, damage, or destroy the consciousness. It's an appearance in awareness. And you are that one pristine, undisturbed awareness. Each of these, what contemplative? How you use these in life is that, okay, so suffering and indeed everything else is an appearance in consciousness. Let me stay with that for a while. Let me notice it. Is it a fact or just a theory? You see, it's very obviously a fact. It cannot not be a fact. Whatever happens to you in life is basically happening as an appearance in your consciousness. And is consciousness disturbed, damaged, agitated by that happening? Or is that disturbance, damage, is it an agitation, is it in the body mind? It's in the body mind. And the body mind also is an appearance in the consciousness. It's a part, a character in the movie. It doesn't disturb the screen. It's good for the screen, but what about me? You are the screen on which the movie of your life is playing. You are the, Shankaracharya calls it Darpana, the mirror of consciousness in which the universe appears. Step down a little further. Prakriti Parinama, dukkha. What is the nature of dukkha, of suffering? It's a transformation of nature itself. This physical body, mind, these are material things. And transformations of that. It's the same nerve which carry pain and pleasure. Physical pain and pleasure. Same nerves. Even the most pleasant feeling in the nerve, the most sensuous kind of delight, if you make it a little more extreme, it becomes pain. From the material perspective, from the medical perspective, from the psychological perspective, there isn't much difference between pain and pleasure. It's the same phenomenon. So this also gives us some peace of mind to deal with it. So what is the Vastu Drishti? Vastu Drishti means what is pain, what is suffering. Highest Brahma Swarupa, it's none other than Brahma. Logically it has to be. Brahma Vivarta, an appearance, like an illusion, like a magic trick, like a dream, like a movie, in consciousness. Right? Or even easier, it's a transformation of nature, Prakriti Parinama. The Sanskrit words are easy to remember. Brahma Swarupa, Brahma Vivarta, Prakriti Parinama. Entire talks can be given on each of them, like pages and pages can be written on each of these terms. Then, now let's do a little bit of analysis of sadhana drishti. How do we tackle sorrow from a spiritual perspective? What's the Vedantic solution, spiritual solution for sorrow? Here, the different approaches in spiritual life, they will help us in different ways. The bhakti approach, the devotional approaches, even sorrow is Ishvara Anugrah, is the grace of God. How so? That whatever I do, it's like puja, like a worship you perform in a temple. When you perform worship in a temple, you offer food. And that food comes back to you as the prasad, or the sacred food. So, if I consider all my actions as puja, I am worshipping the Lord through all my actions in life. And then whatever the Lord gives back to me is prasad from the Lord. good and bad, tragic and terrific, all of that can be treated, or we can make an attempt to treat it as prasada. Lord, you have given this to me. This prasada tastes beautiful, mango. This one doesn't taste so good, prune. But both are prasada. If I give you a choice, if you want a mango or a piece of mango or a prune, a mango. But it's prasada, which is being given at the temple, yours of the temple. Now you generally don't go and choose. Don't give me that prasada. Give me that. So in life we don't have a choice. Things keep coming to us in a stream. If you can transform it in family life, in community life, so many things keep coming. You say that, what do you know, Swami? You are a monk. True. I have a bird's eye view, second-hand view. But being a monk also makes me like a person whom people go to with problems. So I see sort of encyclopedic view, like lots of people from different perspectives, they talk about the challenges they face in life. It also makes me feel how vulnerable we are in life, how open and how delicate we are and open to suffering we are. That's why we need this. This is what will help. Again and again it helps. I have seen doctors in the height of the COVID pandemic coming and telling me that one thing that helped me to power through this, it's like a battlefield. You don't see it out there in the city, but in the ICUs, COVID wards, we see it. It's like a battlefield. One thing that helped me to power through this crisis, day after day after day of death, is spirituality. Whatever kind of spirituality they practice. Could be a mantra japa, could be a devotional, like a prayer, could be moments of meditation or mindfulness. All of that helps. All of that helps. I am quite clear, even just seeing this one big crisis which we saw in the last 2 years, that spirituality really, really works. Deeply it works. So, from a bhakti perspective, can we accept all of this as prasada? From a jnana perspective of Vedantic perspective of I am the witness consciousness, there is a term, prajna aparad, an offense against your wisdom, an offense against your knowledge. If we claim, I have studied Vedanta, I have heard this, I have got a clarity that I am not the body mind, I am the witness consciousness, then this going through this suffering is an offense. Offense against your own philosophy, against your own realization, against your own understanding. One sadhu used to say very beautifully, there in the Himalayas, they say, Prapt Gyan ka adar kare. Honor the wisdom already acquired, or honor the knowledge already acquired. We go around collecting a lot, new books, Amazon, new lectures, YouTube, and we go on collecting so much information. But Prapt Gyan ka adar kare means the knowledge that you have already accumulated. A lot of it is actually powerful and useful. Try to respect it, honor it. So why is it an offense to suffer when you think you are Atman? It's like people saying, I realize Swami, it's all perfectly clear to me. What the Upanishads say, Gita says, I am Brahman, I am existence, consciousness, bliss. That is not my problem. My problem is my son doesn't listen to me. If your existence, consciousness, bliss, and greatness, my son comes again to play now. So that will be taken care of when you say, I am this one unlimited awareness. And this one unlimited awareness through this body mind, I am looking at myself through the body mind of the one I call myself. From that perspective, you have to deal with it. And you have to deal with it. But it's a much better perspective. You can't keep switching back between I am the absolute reality and I am your dad. If I am the absolute reality, the kid is also the absolute reality. And from that serene, calm, unperturbed perspective, you try to do the best that you can. Something will come out of it, much better than what usually comes out. So that is called, an offense against your already acquired knowledge. Prapta Jnana. What a simple teaching. Sri Ramakrishna's disciple was there, Swami Adbhutananda. He was strange unique among all the other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna because he was unlettered. He was practically illiterate. That's why his name was Adbhutananda, extraordinary, because Adbhuta means extraordinary. Extraordinary because being this illiterate man, he became enlightened. So it shows very clearly that academic degrees and spiritual enlightenment, they're not the same thing. They're quite different. And so Adbhutananda was a straight talker. And that comes of not having academic degrees. So when people would go to him and say, Swami, please give us some spiritual advice. I'll tell you what he would say in broken Bengali. He was Hindi speaking, so it's broken Bengali he would say, and translate. He would say, Shalara upadesh kuriye badai, korbe na kichu. These rascals, they go around collecting spiritual advice, but they won't do anything. So prajna aparad, an offense against the knowledge already acquired. And the spiritual benefits of suffering. Then there's a term called tapasya. Tapasya means spiritual austerity. Some of you fast, and some of you, Shivaratri, stay awake all night meditating on Shiva. So fasting, depriving yourself deliberately of sleep on one night, or things like that. Austerity, discipline. Consciously, deliberately putting the body through some practice which you normally would not do. That increases your control of the body mind. That suffering. One can treat one's suffering, one's sorrow, one's trouble in the world as a spiritual practice, as tapasya. Literally, the word tapasya in Sanskrit, it means, tapa means heat. Suffering generates a kind of psychic heat. You feel it when you are sorrowful, anxiety, crying, helpless. Things seem very bad for you. It's a kind of internal heat it generates. Now that is also tapasya. You can take it as tapasya. But this is my spiritual practice, my Lord. You put me in this situation. Alright, I'm not going to escape from this situation. I will go through with it, and I offered this to you as my spiritual practice. Tapasya. It has a great benefit, more than pleasure. Suffering has the benefit of generating what is called dispassion, vairagya. Slowly one gets a kind of wisdom about life itself. Too much of pleasure, one remains immature. A few kicks and blows, one becomes a much more mature person. Next time they are also ready to deal with it much more easily. I have seen many things in my life, this one also I will tackle. Right? So, these are some of the ways in which one tackles sorrow. I'll summarize. Karana drishti, what are the causes of sorrow? And 3 levels of that. Vastu drishti, what is the nature of sorrow? And then finally, the sadhana drishti, spiritual practice from the jnana, knowledge perspective, from the bhakti perspective, from just the perspective of tapasya, spiritual practice which austerities, which makes us spiritually tougher. Vidaraga bhayakrodha sthitadi muniruchyate. Freed from desire, this hankering to catch hold of something. You are the limitless existence consciousness space. You don't need anything in this world. I'm reminded of Freud, who was this old atheist. He didn't believe in any religion. But he was a very wise old man. And some of the insights he had into human nature, he says, he defines libido. We generally understand it in the sense of physical passion. He defines libido in a very broad sense, as any movement of the subject to the object. Any movement of the subject to the object. When you're reaching out to the world, there's desire. Vidaraga, free from desire. You can still reach out to the world, but not with a beggar's hat. I want something from the world. No. Always reach out with your ability to give to people, to places, to. So, reaching out to the world, but Vidaraga without any hankering. I'll be completed by this person, by this thing, by this activity. No, you are complete already. Bhaya, fear. Fear is about the future. When I want things that I am expecting in the future, or I feel that it will not come, or I am anxious about something bad that might happen, fear. Freed from fear. You are the limitless Atman. What have you got to fear? Nothing at all. And then, anger. Anger is for a present obstacle. Right now, some obstacle is there to my desire, that flashes into anger. Freed from this, your wisdom is stable. Sthitadi muniruchyate. The sage of stabilized wisdom. Alright, let me do a peace chant and we'll take some questions. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram. Thank you for your patience hearing. If you have questions, how do we do the Q&A?
We have I have to spot the other mic. We have a couple of mic runners who will take. Would you like to stay there?
I think yes. So
In that case, as soon as we locate
how do we?
other mic and Vedika. Okay, Vedika has a mic. All right,
So just raise your hand and then volunteer somebody.
all right, Vedika, we have a question right here.
Please tell us your name and keep the question short and sharp.
Namaste Swamiji.
Namaste.
My name is Shiv Shankar. I'm one of the followers in video in YouTube. Almost every day I see you. My question is, in Bhagavad Gita there are 700 verses are there. And there is one verse that stands out to you that attracts you, that is your favorite.
That's a difficult one. Nobody has ever asked me. Give us one verse from the entire 700 verses. There's so many powerful verses. Let me just give you, instead of one, 3 places. One is, of course, what we talked about today, the entire sequence from 2.55 to 2.72. It is called the Sthitaprajna sequence, the sequence of stabilized wisdom. Really, if you have the Gita at home, I suggest you go and just read through it calmly. Another place, because I'm a little philosophical bent of mind, non-dualistic. So in the second chapter, it says the 16th verse, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sada. This verse, someone called it Gita ka darshanik hidayah. This is the philosophical heart of the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, from an Advaita perspective. If you read, Shankaracharya writes the most extensive commentary on it. Maybe next only to, in the 13th chapter, the second verse. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. There Shankaracharya writes the most extensive commentary in the whole Bhagavad Gita, page after page after page. Extraordinary. There Krishna says, I am the one consciousness in all beings. Which means all of us are one consciousness. And that one consciousness in all beings is God. What an extraordinary verse, and that just half a sentence. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Know me, Krishna says, to be the one consciousness in all beings. And we might say, I am consciousness. Krishna says he is the one consciousness in all beings, and I and Krishna are one and the same. Correct. That is the teaching of Tattva-masi. And the last one is a universal favorite. I think everybody who's a path of knowledge, path of love, devotion, whatever you people all like that last teaching of Krishna at the end of the 18th chapter. That one. Sarva-dharma parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Giving up all other religious practices. Take refuge in God. In me, Krishna says in me. In God alone. Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. I shall free you from all limitations, sins, sorrows, afflictions. Do not grieve. This is the promise of God at the end of that dialogue. So, second chapter, 16th verse, second chapter verses 2.55 to 2.72, then 13th chapter, second verse, depending on which version of the Gita you have. 13th chapter is a bit tricky, so there's one extra verse there. So second or third verse, Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. 18th chapter, I think 56th verse or something like that. Sarva dharma parityajya. Good. 66? 66.
Vedika, we have a question.
Namaste Swamiji, my name is Ravi. I've been following your Mandukya Upanishad, came up to chapter 78. I have a question about the consciousness. Now if I come and say, you just said that you are the consciousness in which all this is happening. Now my friend comes and asks you the question, you're going to tell him that you are the consciousness. I'm not able to reconcile when you say you are the consciousness, you are the consciousness. How do I think about this? Is it multiple consciousnesses? Or how do I?
Right. So our common sense idea is that we are bodies with consciousness, or our body mind with consciousness. In that case, there are clearly many bodies and many minds, and that's why it seems that consciousness also is many. There is a huge amount of discussion on this. So the Sankhyans will say there are many consciousnesses. But Advaitins, non-dualists, we say that there is only one consciousness, which is the ultimate reality in which you are. That, reflected in many bodies and minds, appears as many beings. So, at our core, in reality, we are all one being and operating through many bodies and minds. And we feel like different beings. Wouldn't that mean we are interacting with I am interacting with myself only? True. That's what Advaita Vedanta wants to say. Everybody you see in this world, no matter how great or how small, living, human being, animal, all are we alone are that. All of this. It's an appearance. See, this whole universe, whatever you see in the world, and including the body and the mind, is an appearance to consciousness, one step. Second step, it is an appearance in consciousness. Third, it is nothing but consciousness. Each step is huge. First of all, to admit that whatever happens in the world, whatever is there in this universe, is an appearance to consciousness. Which itself, sit and think. There is a lot of philosophical baggage involved in this movement. From this, the next jump is even is deeper, very profound. It's not appearing to consciousness, it's appearing in consciousness. If something is appearing to you, that means there is a boundary. There's something outside consciousness and coming and appearing to you. But really, is there something outside? It's all in consciousness. There's no time to argue these things out. Swami, no matter how much you yell, it won't make everything in consciousness. I am reminded in Haridwar, this kind of talk was going on. A Vedanta teacher was saying, all of this is sab aap mein hai. And all of this is in you, the consciousness. Somebody from the back of the audience said, how is that possible? I am here and you are there. Main yahan hu, aap wahan hai. So this itself is outside me. How can everything be in me? And then the teacher, he said in reply, to tell you in Hindi and answer, yahan aur wahan, ye kya dono hi aap mein nahi? This, you're saying, I am here and you are there. How can everything be in me? But even here and there, both are both appearing in your consciousness. If it were a dream, for example, you are standing here and you're watching this big, beautiful scenery in a dream, and somebody was standing far away, and you think, oh, I'm here, and that person's there. But if you wake up, you'll realize, near and far, this person and that person both were in me, the dreaming mind. Even space is in consciousness in that way. But remember, when we say space is in consciousness, in order to stop sounding crazy, you have to see that we are talking about consciousness as Chaitanya, Chit, pure consciousness, as in Advaita Vedanta. Not the empirical consciousness which is connected with the brain and the mind, which is basically a reflection of the limitation of pure consciousness. So anyway, huge question. No time. At the back, the lady there? Oh, the gentleman. Don't confuse her.
You go there, and so then you come back.
Send the second mic.
Tell us your name and ask the question.
My name is Kaushik. I have been following you since the past 3 years. Recently I got introduced to self-inquiry and I have been going through it.
Got introduced to?
Self-inquiry.
Self-inquiry.
And my question is, isn't witnessing the suffering is also a form of avoiding the suffering? I mean, whenever I am deprived, I like to go to the witness consciousness and try to observe the sensations, but I feel like more of it, I'm using it like a technique rather than navigating through suffering. From my personal experience, I have observed like whenever I accept the suffering rather than witness it, it disappears.
Right. Whenever I accept the suffering, it disappears. That lesson is correct. One reason also is not accepting the suffering, pushing back against it. This resistance itself increases the suffering. There is a saying that, and a little anecdote about Bernard Shaw. One little lady in one of Bernard Shaw's talks comes up and says, not Bernard Shaw, Bertrand Russell, comes up and says, Professor, I accept the universe. And Bertrand Russell said, by God, madam, you'd better. Yes, so acceptance is a very powerful spiritual practice. Acceptance just means that we are in tune with reality. That's why it lessens. Now, witnessing as a technique won't help much. When Advaita Vedanta says you are the witness of everything, it's not as a technique. So what do I mean witnessing as a technique? It will be like something like vipassana. It's something like mindfulness. My mind is scattered, I'm not paying attention. Now I'm paying attention. This is witnessing. Why is it a technique? Because as long as you practice it, it will go on. If you stop practicing, it goes away. But your name is Kaushik. Yes. You are not practicing being Kaushik. Even when you don't think that I am Kaushik, but still the Kaushik identity is there in the back of your mind. This is even more so. The witness consciousness which Advaita Vedanta says you are, is basically what you are. Whether you know it or you don't know it, whether you realize it or not, whether you pay attention to it or not, you are basically awareness. One sadhu in Gangotri would say, Tum jano ya na jano, tum mano ya na mano, tum hi Ram. Whether you know it or not, whether you accept it or not, you are Ram, which means you are God. But in a very special Advaitic sense, not that.
But right now I'm ignorant of me being in this consciousness.
Yes. We don't know that.
We know
So
that.
that's why it seems like a practice, a technique. And technique is very difficult. You can do it, but acceptance is much better. And for a devotee, acceptance is that much easier. If I feel that there is a Lord, a God in charge of everything of this universe, and I have a loving relationship with God, the Father, Mother, in whichever way, then it's much easier in a very intimate, loving, quiet relationship with the heart to accept what is happening in life. Still difficult, but
Thank you so much.
We already have there.
Maharaj Dandavat Pranam. I'm a devotee of Ramakrishna Mission. I'm a big follower of yours.
What's
So
your
I
name?
want, my name is Tathagat Bhattacharya. So this is my question. Like it's kind of what you were saying based on that. So you were saying about that Sri Krishna in Gita said that I'm there everywhere. Matta parataram nanda kinchi sasti dhananjay mui sadhumita bhutam sukshamaliganam. I'm there in that garland where the manis are there and that thread. And also in Chandi Ma says that Ekai Baham Jagat Tatra Ditya Kamavavar. Apart from me, there is no one, there is no second in this world apart from me. So right now it's very important for us to see, that equality among each other. Like we need to see that Chaitanya Satta between in everyone, right? But today in our modern world, it's very difficult to see that kind of stuff. Like we do not have Thakur Ramakrishna, they will just touch, like he touched Swami Vivekananda and he kept on seeing that Chaitanya Satta in everything. So what is the practice we can do right now to have that kind of equality where we can see each other as that kind of...
Alright, as to your question. But it does not really depend upon, having someone like Sri Ramakrishna. Vivekananda said that what I have given here will go on for more than 1,000 years. So what the spiritual masters have given us in all religions, in all spiritual traditions, this is a vast treasury which we have. We don't really need many more masters to keep coming and giving us more teachings on top of that. All of these are powerful and they work. So, what is the practice? First of all, to realize that it does not depend on a practice. You are that reality and everyone else is that reality already. It depends more on uncovering an existing fact. And uncovering is done by discovery. So, first of all, do it within yourself. As long as I think of myself as a body, I think of everybody else as a body. As long as I think of myself as a mind or a person, I think of others as persons. That's when questions will come. Yes, Atman is good, Brahman is alright, but what do you do when an evil person? What do you do with Adolf Hitler or something like that? That's a person. But beyond the body, beyond the mind, you are at your deepest level. You are this Atman which is existence, consciousness, place. The more we see ourselves as that, it becomes very easy to see others as that. So, inquiring into one's own reality by the Mandukya way of 3 states, by the Drisya way, by the Vaiktirya way of the 5 levels of the human personality, by any one of these or more of these, begin to see as my idea about myself transforms. Am I a human being in search of spirituality, or am I a spiritual being having a human experience? I like that saying. So when this paradigm shift happens, then you can apply it to others, it will happen automatically. You begin to see others as spiritual beings also. Even if they do not, but you see them.
Yeah, because right now given the scenario, it's very important, to see
No, don't stress the scenario.
Yeah.
I can tell you maybe in many ways the scenario is much better than it used to be in the past. In history, people who study history know most of history was what some saying is there. Nasty, short and brutal. Human life in most of history was nasty, short and brutal. In many ways, our lives are actually much better. I know there are many, many problems. They're actually much better than. So it's scenario independent. Last question. Two questions.
Yeah, there's one lady
One
here.
lady, just back to microphone.
Can you raise your hand?
Malika.
Okay, the lady there. Tell us your name and ask the question.
My name is Deepti. I'm a beginner in spirituality. So just I wanted to know, even though we practice so many things, but how to stabilize them? We are practicing for some days. After that, again we are falling down and think. So can you please tell us?
Yes. I'll give you two suggestions. One is a broad summation of all the yogas. Somebody asked me, the 4 yogas you talk about, jnana, bhakti, karma, dhyana. Can you summarize them in just without any reference to God or spirituality? Basically, what do you do in day-to-day life? One is karma yoga. The essence is selfless, not selfish. The more I make an effort to be selfless, not selfish. The essence of meditation is focus, not distraction. The essence of bhakti yoga is love, not desire. And the essence of jnana yoga is knowledge of the self, not knowledge of the other. Knowledge of the other is science and academic knowledge, knowledge of the self. So these 4: selflessness, not selfishness; focus, not distraction; love, not desire; self-knowledge, not other knowledge. And the second thing I would like to say is, I found personally, to be steady in spiritual life, one needs Ishta Devata. That means one's own path, which I pick up. So in our tradition, I can say what we do is, a guru gives us an Ishta mantra. We take mantra diksha. So now suppose the guru comes and says, from now on, you will worship God as Krishna. And not exclusively. You know that all forms of God are the same reality. But your personal meditation, devotion will be centered around one form, one conception of God. That gives you focus. That gives you stability.
But as we are living in this normal life, Laukika Jivana.
Arjuna was living a most normal life.
Yeah.
So, normal life
We
is...
have to be stable by facing different forces from outside.
Right. So that's why you need regular spiritual practice. Daily routine is of great help.
Some period, I feel like I am good at these things and sometimes really fall.
Correct. So don't worry about it. Your real nature is the Atman, your real nature is spiritual, that never goes away no matter how many times we fall, it's there for us. But it's better to have a routine. Make a structured routine, try to follow it, and think about mantra diksha so that you have a root in some particular practice for the rest of your life. Alright, the last question.
Get 2 hands up, so sir.
Quickly, yeah, question.
Dhanyavad and Pranam. I'm Swami. So I was a little bit confused about one of your parts. I couldn't get that. So if I don't let myself be hurt, I won't be hurt, right? I have to give the permission to be hurt. Now, on the other hand, if I am not hurt, I would not react to it, to do something to change the situation. So what I mean to say is that I look at the sufferings around me and I tell myself, I should not be hurt about it. But if I am not really hurt about it, I will not do anything to change that situation, to remove those sufferings. suffering.
Yes, you're right. So, possible misunderstanding is, does Vedanta make you stony-hearted? That I am like stoically putting up with my own pains and I don't care about the pains and sufferings of others? No, just the opposite. Vivekananda says, one thing it has given me is it has enlarged my heart. Not in a medical condition. So, Vedanta should make us more sensitive. What it does is, usually we are very sensitive when it comes to my own suffering. Notice, it is natural to us. And we are generally selfish, we really don't care so much about others. It's only a few people who really care about others and who are willing to step forward and do things for others. So that's what it means. Not to be so self-obsessed and self-engrossed that one's little problems have become so enormous that I don't care about anything else. So rather, my own problems minimize and you are available to the world, to other people. You notice, one good way of answering this question is to look at the lives of the saints. If you look at the lives of, say for example, Vivekananda, he suffered greatly in life. He died at the age of, he said about age 40. Physical breakdown because of extreme hard work and sufferings in his family before he became a monk. And throughout his life, he just struggled and struggled and struggled. Today I am here because of Vivekananda. We are gathering many reasons we can thank Vivekananda for that. In many ways, this Indian diaspora is here today, and India is an independent country. Hinduism as a religion exists the way it does in Vivekananda. So, yet his whole suffering and the work he did was for others, and Vedanta enables him to do that. Another way of putting it is, suffering is bad and should be removed. In the case of, as I remove my own suffering, I should be engaged in trying to remove the suffering of others, because just as my suffering hurts me, the suffering of others also hurts them. It's not like switching off something.
So basically, what it means is that there is a dichotomy of thought regarding how my reaction should be to the hurt, to the hurting or the feeling of hurt being hurt. So if it concerns me, then I should not be so much bothered about it. But if it concerns others,
yes,
then I should react.
But it's not dichotomy, that's the thing. That's why I said it's an advanced practice. A lot has gone on before it. Before it, Krishna's teaching about the Atman, which frees you from the thralls of one personality. I am not just this one person. I am this one consciousness shining through this as Sarvapriyananda, shining to all the others, this person, that man, this child, that woman, everywhere the same consciousness is shining through. So, now when I look at suffering, then what will be my attitude to suffering? If I am the one in all beings, and the one who is suffering in all beings, should all my energy, now that we have understood it, should all your energy be to take care of the suffering in only that body mind, or should it expand out to as many as you can? Naturally it will expand out. Otherwise, what's left? The dichotomy comes only when I feel I am this person. Now the teaching is, don't take care of your suffering, take care of other suffering. Then the approach to suffering becomes divided. Whereas if I feel I am the one consciousness in all bodies and minds, then the suffering is, that's not divided, not dichotomous. It is one unified teaching. Remove suffering. Remove suffering. Where this identification with one body, mind, one personality, this is sort of natural to everybody. This obstructs our efforts at removing suffering, because then we are obsessed with our own suffering. This is what. It's a good question. Last question. The lady raised her hand. Oh, whoever.
Let's go to the lady and then we come to this gentleman. Okay. And then go stand next to the lady there.
My name is Parameshwaran. I used to grow up in Chidwan University. My question is very valuable. For the past 2000 years, we have seen a lot of yogis.
Speaking to the microphone.
For the past 2000 years, we have seen a lot of yogis from Buddha to Sai Baba demonstrating spirituality. And most of them are from India. So, in that category, when I see on the West, after Jesus Christ, I don't see much spiritual consciousness in sense of what's the reason?
That way I'm a bit of an Indian chauvinist. I feel the concept of a punya bhumi. It is, in fact, Vivekananda was very clear about that different civilizations have certain characteristics, certain ways, modes of development over centuries and millennia. So Vivekananda, he said, spirituality has been the unique characteristic of the Indians for like millennia now. And this doesn't take much of analysis. You see, like thousands of people, even today, in this country, the moment you have a spiritual inquiry, spiritual desire or something like that, passport, backpack, off to India. That's been going on for decades now. And imagine, people like Vivekananda, or Paramahansa Yogananda, or someone like Prabhupada, so many teachers, Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, and many others. Even the ones who brought the physical part of yoga, all Krishnamacharya, Iyengar, and all of them. So they are individual people, no political power, no great religious organization behind them, no political power behind them, no military power behind them. Often individuals. But what made them so tremendously successful? Their own efforts and their own great character, of course. But what they have to share is so powerful and beautiful. People just lap it up all over the world on the merits of its own of the teaching itself, of the spiritual science itself. Whether it's Vedanta, whether it's Tantra, whether it's Bhakti, whether it's Yoga, whatever it is. And the sources all go back to India. Vivekananda once said when he came here to the West, whenever some great political power has knit the world together, the wisdom of India has spread out to those sources. It happened in ancient times during the Roman Empire, and he said again during the Islamic Empire, and again he says now that the British have knit the world into the British Empire, again the wisdom of India will flow out across the world, which we see happening in the last 100 years. Yeah. Last question. Tell us your name and ask the question. Is it on?
Yeah, my name is Benita Natarajan. And I had a question about when you were talking about the two arrows, the first arrow which we don't have control over, and then the second one which is something we can control. How do you propose, or what do you suggest when the first arrow brings to light a certain suffering which actually exists as a social injustice? So at that point, by me, shielding myself by the second arrow, I'm actually shielding myself from social injustice, pretending it doesn't happen, because that I think is a larger suffering, because once you recognize it, you have to eradicate it.
I get your question. No, answer to that is this, that first of all, it's not that we do not have control over the first arrow. When the first arrow hits us, we have control. All of our science and politics and whatever we do in the world is our reaction to the first arrow. Illness is there. What do you do in hospitals? You are treating the problem. That's the first arrow. There is a crime. So your arrangement of law and order is again dealing with the first arrow. There is social instability, or then you go out and vote in the elections and change the government. That's your dealing with the first arrow. Only point is, what spirituality says is that it is not enough. It never has been, it never will be. You need to deal with the second arrow also. Not only that, the more you deal with the second arrow, the better equipped you are to deal with the first arrow also. And again, like the question was there, look at the lives of such people, whether it's Vivekananda or Mahatma Gandhi, deeply spiritual persons. They're very alive to social injustice and problems in society, and they do more about it than us. They do more about it than us. And yet if you ask them, they are spiritually very centered. Even in this country, Martin Luther King, he was actually a very spiritual man, first and foremost. And then an activist and fighter for rights. So, to deal with the effects of the first arrow, yes, of course, people will deal with it. From ancient times, you cannot ignore it. But it is done much better if you deal with the effect of the second arrow also. Then you are much more equipped to deal with human suffering, to counter human suffering as a whole. I remember there was this hospital in Arizona, in Phoenix. They asked me to give a talk there on mindfulness. I said, I'm not exactly mindfulness teacher, it's Buddhist tradition. Anyway. But I said, look at the context. This is a hospital. And you're treating illness here, physical illness. But also you're introducing mindfulness for staff and patients and pain management and all that. So you're basically dealing with both the arrows, which is really good. On that very nice note, let me end. Thank you so much. Thank you.